Welcome to another episode of Legally Wired. I'm Shivani and with me is Mitra. For today's discussion, we are going to be walking you through a pathway to stand out as law students and effectively network with your seniors in the industry. And that's by way of building a digital presence while at law school. So for today's discussion, we have broadly broken down this topic to discuss what we mean by building a digital presence, how does one do it while at law school, what platforms we recommend to do it, and why this is important to get started while you're at law school. So, Mitra, what do we mean by a digital presence?
So, crafting a digital presence online is much more than simply creating a LinkedIn profile. Firstly, creating a LinkedIn profile isn't much. It's just an index of people online and nobody cares. So, you must do something more than profile creation. That can happen only when you put out content for a relevant or a field that you are interested in an area of law. So, putting content online will help you either showcase your expertise in a certain field of law or build expertise and interest as you keep writing in an area of law. For example, let's say that you are interested in constitutional law, so and you write a lot of content regarding prominent issues in constitutional law and you post them on different platforms. You can create an digital profile that becomes an effective tool for networking with other seniors in the industry.
In the same space. Yeah, that's right. So, largely, then building a digital presence online is very similar to creating a brand as a professional or creating a personal brand. But it's also a bit different because we are picking one aspect of building a personal brand. And the reason that we're doing it is because when you build a personal brand, there's a lot more that goes with it. You need to build a style of practice which is unique to you. People need to be able to recognize your work by just looking at it. And all of that is not really possible while you're at law school, and that's something that is built over time. But an aspect of brand building, which is building a digital presence, is something that people can get started on while at law school. So how does one, if one is at law school listening to this and they're in their second year, third year, they've identified what their area of interest is, what would be a good starting point to?
So, a good starting point once you've recognized an area of interest is to go through newspapers routinely or regularly rather, and look at the day-to-day issues that for that particular area of law. For example, if you look at these regulations regarding intermediaries, and there's so many issues that you can identify. One example that comes to my mind is the role of the government in identifying whether certain content should be taken down or not, or fact finding, or where they themselves are the fact checkers. There's a problem with that. A lot of people have views on these kind of pieces. So your ability to write content on such issues will generate eyeballs to that piece, because everyone wants to know what the general public is thinking about these issues. And if you write a really interesting piece, it could bring you into the spotlight.
Yeah, especially for people who are getting started off, even if it's not a piece that gets published in a paper or if it's not something that gains a lot of traction, any serious reader, if they come across that piece and they're interested in this area, again, this is in the space of constitutional law, because you will have to touch upon topics like freedom of speech and expression, which is what the crux of the issue is, where the line ends with national interests and where the government action can be looked upon as infringing someone's right to free speech.
I think the rules of the game have definitely changed. In our time, it wasn't really possible to create an online presence, and that's why this concept was never there in the first place. You wrote to publications and they probably published your content. And even if they published your content, not many people were reading those law journals. Now, with how internet and different platforms have come about, it's a lot more easy for you to post your stuff on your own page or on any platform, and then people read and they recognize who you are, and that helps you create some kind of a
Network.
digital identity. For example, let's take Shivani in law school, and she's interested in a lot of constitutional issues, especially with respect to criminal laws, and you write a lot of content on jails and how prisoners' rights in jails, and you connect it to constitutional issues. And let's say you publish an article every week. Some, because of how algorithms work for these platforms, it's going to show up on somebody's feed who's also interested in that area. It could be a senior, or it could be another specialist in the same field who's in the industry. So when they keep reading that content, they automatically recognize that you are interested in this field, you're interested in this area. So automatically that helps you build that networking channel, and that's how it has a long term impact for you by building a digital presence online.
Yeah, and for this to work, for you to be able to be recognized by your work, one thing that students need to stay clear of is just fact reporting. For example, the intermediary example that you took. So it's likely that there'll be an article about how Facebook was compelled to take down someone's content. Especially, it's very common these days with content of certain comedians that is being taken down on Instagram and on Facebook. So you see this article, you connect it to the intermediary guidelines. Your article, what you write then, should not just be a fact reporting saying that this content was taken down and this is pursuant to the intermediary guidelines that was recently introduced, but rather you need to be able to identify what the issue of law is and be able to go deeper and share your own research and your own opinions. And that's how you stand out as a lawyer, for your research skills and for your writing skills.
Correct. And especially when it comes to your opinion cannot be a flat out opinion. It has to be backed with some
Research.
rationale, it has to be backed with some facts. There can be some amount of viewpoint over there based on morals and where you come from, but it always has to be backed with something, with some authoritative piece, so that it buttresses your argument better.
Yeah, and those are the pieces that someone senior in the industry would still be interested in reading. If you're doing just a fact reporting, they already know it. They're on top of it. That's their practice, that's their bread and butter, right? So they don't find any value other than knowing that okay, this person who's on my in my network writes about this.
So overall, maintaining a digital presence in this day and age is clearly important. It's a surprise that a lot of law school students haven't taken to this. I would value this as a more sure shot opportunity to get placed and networked for advanced opportunities in a field of your choice, as opposed to doing moot courts and debates. Moot courts and debates are all good, but in terms of how much value they add, they only matter if you win them. Now, I mean, you realistically have to look what are the chances of you winning these kind of moot courts and debates. Now, especially if you're from a tier 3, tier 4 law school, and you don't have that much of a network, and you don't have a very strong alum, then the best way to do is to create a digital presence online, because just being online, the impact of it is great because you have a very far reach, and you're connecting with a lot of people. I think what platforms you choose also
Matter.
make a difference. What are your views on platforms for creating a digital presence online?
So, LinkedIn is a great place to get started. There's really not much of an hurdle to post in LinkedIn. You already have some sort of network that's built where You have people who can read your posts on their feed. So that's a great place to start. And but the thing with LinkedIn or any of these digital platforms that we're discussing, right, is you need to also adopt a different style of writing. You can't write like how you would have written a research paper in law school or in an exam. It has to be a little more easy to read, connected to the audience, and brief, right? So that is a skill that you have to pick up before you start writing online. But LinkedIn would be a great place to start.
You can also use Substack for larger pieces. One way to do this is to write one big piece of content and use that big piece of content to repurpose a summary of that content on LinkedIn. And then you can add a link to Substack where interested readers can read your long form article. You can collect their email IDs and then you can start sending them newsletters once a month on more content in the same field. And you can also use Twitter for headline style content that you want to post. If you keep doing this 30 days, you will create a lot of followers. You will create a lot of eyeballs. It just opens a lot of possibilities if you actually do this right. It puzzles me that nobody actually attempts to do it this way.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm just thinking of examples in my network. I don't know any law students whose content has stood out, and I've taken a pause and checked out their profile. But there is this one young lawyer who has been writing about fintech and legal issues in fintech for a very long time. So now what that does is he's, I think, must be 2 years into the industry, and that's very interesting for him to pick up that and go into that level of depth. Now what happens is, if me as someone who has no experience in fintech, I want to understand something for any work, I know who to reach out to. And for example, if there is any opening in my network for a fintech position and someone asks me for a recommendation, I know who to talk about, right? And that's the kind of network effect that this creates, and it would be great if it starts at the law school level.
Overall, there is a huge value in doing content online. I mean, one is it clearly opens the channel to networking. People always keep saying, you need to network, you need to network. But what does it actually mean? Because if
Right.
you think about it, walking up to someone and introducing yourself is not a network. It's not a way to create a network because you haven't really answered the question, why should they care? Right? And having an online presence to certain extent would answer that question of why should they care. Here is somebody who's not just giving you their name and address, but they're also showcasing to you that they're really interested in the kind of work that you do, and they are creating works in that field. So you have to take a look up for them. So in real terms, right, if somebody actually looks at the kind of content that you're writing and it is of interest to them, they recognize that even more, considering that you're not in the profession yet, you're still in college while you're doing this as a side hustle. So they're going to respect that a lot more, and they on their own they will probably offer you an internship, or they will introduce you to other people where you can go do internships. So it has a very profound impact from a career perspective.
Yeah, I would say that that would be the primary takeaway from doing this, and that's a primary benefit that our listeners should be aiming for. But a secondary thing that ends up happening when you do this is that you are building core skills that is essential for you as a lawyer, and that's going to be beneficial for you in the long run, right? If someone is doing this effectively for a period of 2 years, 3 years, then their writing skills, their research skills, their analysis is going to be much more stronger, because that's something that just comes with practice.
Agreed. I think we've covered all the things that we need to cover on this topic. But before we close this episode, any giveaways, Shivani, for this
Yeah.
episode?
Yeah, so for students who are interested to start doing this, I have a couple of suggestions for blogs that are written by other lawyers. Again, these are practicing lawyers, but it would be great to model your writing and thinking along these lines. So I link them in the description for reference points on how to start writing, what to write, and what is the kind of content you should be picking up.
And before we close this episode, guys, we request you to give us some feedback and also, share, subscribe, and like this podcast if you found this informative. Thank you.
Thank you.